So we'll open the meeting. We have an agenda that's been listed, and at this point in time, I'm not aware of any amendments to the agenda. So I need someone to resolve that the agenda for the June 17, 2020 Board of Directors meeting be adopted.
I do. Faye here, Faye Campbell.
Okay, Faye moves. Anyone?
I'll second it, Phil.
Phil Sweetnam seconds. All in favor? I'm seeing good hands. All right. So the motion is carried to adopt the agenda as written. And now we're entering into a presentation. And we're going to do the first two presentations and then go to approval of the minutes.
Okay, 0006.
Okay, so is the University of Ottawa person, Elizabeth, online?
Hi, yes, I am.
Oh, fantastic, Elizabeth. So if I think you or Shannon will be sharing a screen that has your presentation on it.
Okay. Shannon, may I ask if you share your screen?
And while we're just waiting quickly, the University of Ottawa, and I'm surprised John Carreau's not online because he was one of the sponsors for this project, was done on the Carp River restoration area, and looking in particular at the elements of the project that were positive in terms of ecosystem services, such as the low impact development, and looking at what follow-up might be needed. So what we wanted to do was to present some of those results because, yes, they were done in Ottawa, but there are elements of the project that I think are relevant to just about anywhere in the watershed, and it's worth other municipalities being aware of some of the conclusions. So Elizabeth, over to you.
Janet, I just noticed Jen is actually on the schedule first to do the conditions report. Hers is just, yeah. So
I'm
sure.
sorry. No, I have it minimized and I can't read it, I guess. So I apologize. I've done that nice introduction. So we'll take the introduction back and we'll go to the watershed condition and outlook report. I'm sorry, Jen, I have it minimized. I can't read it.
No problem. Can everyone hear me?
No. Okay.
Can everyone hear me now? Yes?
You're gonna have to speak loudly though, Jen, okay?
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just do a quick update on the current conditions in the watershed. All the dams have been filled and sealed, ready for the summer months for Crotch Lake, which is being operated. As you can see in the graph, flows of the main system are slightly below normal, and that is because both the earlier, less predominant spring and the below average rainfall for the last 2 months. Crotch Lake levels are right in line with the historical average. The dam is currently spilling water with 2 logs out. We started the drawdown early on Crotch because of the current below average conditions we were seeing. Normally we start pulling logs around the beginning of July, so we're a few weeks ahead. So now we'll have to keep an eye on lake levels and make sure that we don't pull that lake down too fast, especially if we go into any drought conditions. We don't want to aggravate conditions later in the summer. So looking at potential drought conditions, we can see in the past month we had below average rainfall and hit the 1 month precip indicator for level 1 throughout most of the eastern Ontario. This does not indicate that we are in or going into a drought scenario, but if this trend continues for the next few months, it will start to affect our stream flow and could cause us to go into drought status. And here is a map of our current stream flows throughout Eastern Ontario. So you can see, although we're slightly below average, we're still in normal range when looking at drought levels. As for long range forecasts, you can see here it's indicating that we may see slightly above average temperatures for the summer months. For precip, we may see near normal rain amounts. So again, long range forecasts aren't the be all end all. We could see something totally different. We will be keeping an eye on conditions closely and keeping track of our 3-month precipitation indicator, as well as our stream flow level when needed. And we'll wait and see how the summer unfolds. That's everything. Any questions?
You need to unshare your screen so I can see everybody.
Sure.
All right, are there any questions for Jen? All right, Jen, I think that's good. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, so I won't redo the introduction for the Carp River University of Ottawa study, but I do notice that John Carreau, I think, joined us, where he was there for a minute. Oh, there you are. John, I didn't know if you wanted to add any words on the Carp River study.
I just think it's a useful addition to what we heard about Pool Creek at our last meeting. And it gives I think the board a nice overview as to what's happening with the project at large. So with no further ado, I would turn it over to the presenter, Elizabeth.
All right, and
Thank you,
again, I
John.
ask people to turn your video and mute if possible so we can max it, because I had a really hard time hearing Jen.
Shannon, are you online?
I am.
Do you mind sharing the presentation for me? Is that
Sure,
okay?
no problem.
Thank you.
That's fine. Is it on there?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
awesome. Perfect. Okay. So hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Lenkarn, and I'm here today to present an integrated watershed management assessment of the Carp River Restoration Project on behalf of my team members, Sophie Donahue and Brittany Poisson. So second slide. My group members and I are all master's students at the University of Ottawa who undertook this research for our capstone seminar course. And second slide, please. Perfect. We were supervised by our professor, Mary Trudeau, and we were offered tons of guidance by both John Carreau and Sally McIntyre to complete the project. This research would not have been possible without the Ottawa Eco-Talent Network liaising the MVCA with the University of Ottawa. So if we move to the third slide, this presentation will begin with an overview of the Carp River Restoration Project, and then we'll go into next steps our research identified for the future of the site, and a SWOB analysis, and then finally there will be a conclusion in time for questions. So on the fourth slide, you will see the guiding research question for our project, which was with respect to implementing low impact development and green infrastructure in the Carp River watershed, is the MVCA moving in the right direction? In order to answer this question, we reviewed planning documents, monitoring reports, conducted 7 interviews with stakeholders, and completed a literature review of best practices. So if we move to the 5th slide, you will see, some of you are probably wondering what the heck is low impact development and or green infrastructure. So in its most basic sense, green infrastructure is designed to replicate the natural functions of ecosystems. So examples of green infrastructure include parks, gardens, engineered wetlands, and stormwater ponds. Low impact development, on the other hand, is a particular type of green infrastructure, which is designed to incorporate nature-based solutions into urban areas with the end goal of reducing the impact of runoff quality and quantity by managing stormwater close to its origin. So examples of LID include green roofs and permeable pavement. So in the top left here, you'll see an example of a green roof. In the top right, you'll see an example of a wetland. The bottom right shows permeable pavement, and then the bottom left shows an example of either a bioswale or a water retention garden, just for visuals. So if we move to the 6th slide, now that you all have background information on what green infrastructure and low impact development are, I'm going to move into the Carp River Restoration Project. So the Carp River, as you may or may not know, flows entirely within the city of Ottawa. It headwaters in Glen Cairn and flows north towards the Ottawa River. And it's important to note for this presentation that urbanization and land use changes have occurred near the headwaters, whereas downstream, the area is still largely agricultural surrounding the river. So in the early 2000s, the city decided that they wanted to begin developing out in Kanata in the west end of the city. And so numerous studies were undertaken to identify concerns within the Carp River. These studies determined that there was degraded fish habitat, a lack of a riparian zone, which is vegetation surrounding the water's edge that acts as a buffer for pollutants and runoff between the water and the landscape. There was also significant erosion and sedimentation as a result of the lack of a riparian zone, and then lots of flooding that occurred, among other concerns that you'll see listed on the slide. So if we move to slide 7 now, there were 6 restoration project goals and objectives that we identified through our research and our interviews with our stakeholders. So the first was to regain the Carp River's natural functions, including allowing it to be an excellent ecosystem service and provide habitats as well for species that were living in the area. To reclaim land in the floodplain for development, which was kind of how this whole project all started. To promote sustainable development both in Ottawa and in Ontario as a whole, which I will talk about a bit later. And then as well, the final 2 were to develop a recreational area and an educational site for citizens in the area to be able to use the site. So if we move to slide 8, this graphic here shows a general timeline for the CRRP, the Carp River Restoration Project. So what we can see is that historically the river was dredged, straightened, and widened to allow for increased agricultural runoff in the area. However, come the early 2000s, like I've already mentioned, the city was looking to develop in the land surrounding the Carp River, and so they had undertaken a bunch of studies. The most notable of which was the Carp River Watershed Subwatershed study, which was completed in 2004. And so this study essentially identified a game plan, along with the other ones that were done, on the best way to move forward for the restoration project in order to allow for the floodplain to be minimized for the development to occur. So a bunch of models and scenarios were run and identified in order to develop this plan. And in 2008, there ended up being actually a discrepancy in the modeling practices that were used. And so a third-party review was completed. This resulted in a large setback in both budget and timing. However, at the end of the day, in 2015, the project was approved and construction began on the 4-kilometer stretch between Richardson Side Road and Hazeldean Road. And the project was completed in 2018. So slide 9 here kind of shows a very lovely picture of what the restoration site, or a chunk of the restoration site, looks like currently. So the main components of this project included having the channel renaturalized, so you can see kind of the sinuosity or the curviness of the river was reinstated, planting natural native vegetation, creating habitat ponds and wet meadows, which are essentially wetlands for habitat of species, And then as well, in order to achieve the goals of creating a recreational and educational site, numerous bridges and pathways were constructed with access points to the local community. So slide 10 will show you an aerial shot of the restoration area in 2014 prior to the restoration project beginning. And so you can see here, it's quite straight. There's not a lot of natural landscape surrounding it. And then if we switch to slide 11, what you'll see is this is the stark difference in 2017 of the same aerial shot that was done. So you can see the curviness re-added, a couple of the ponds, and some of the vegetation being added back in. So for slide 12, as a whole, our research has demonstrated that the restoration project was indeed a success. Indicators that were used to determine that the project was a success was that flooding had been controlled to the predicted levels within the floodplain. There was an increase in the shorebird population and other aquatic species that had been seen in the past couple of years moving back into the area. And many community members were out and about using the site on a regular basis. As far as next steps for the restoration project, the first next step that we've identified is that long-term monitoring needs to occur past the 3-year compulsory requirement by the Ministry of the Environment to ensure that positive results are going to continue into the future, and that if any discrepancies or areas for concern arise, adaptive management practices can be employed quickly. In particular, it would be important to focus on the role of invasive species to ensure that they do not take over the site. And also benthic invertebrates within the water itself can actually be used as a spot check for oxygen levels or pollutants and just the general health of the river. Something to keep in mind there. With respect to education and community outreach, and then finalizing the living classroom, launching the interpretive app, and finalizing on-site signs, the local community is an excellent source for monitoring information, assuming that they can be provided with the right tools to record the information and are knowledgeable about what to look for. So you guys already have a whole bunch of individuals and community members that are out using the site to begin with, but finalizing the on-site signs and launching the interpretive app, which may have already happened, I'm not sure. I know there was talk of that being in June, will be really useful to be able to give community members the opportunity to help with monitoring and learn more from the site itself and gain more from their visits. Academic research opportunities, similar to the one that we've completed for you guys, can be a really useful way to gather more information about the success of the site, learn more about monitoring, or just generally the use of LID or green infrastructure in the future. And then finally, we heard from some of our interviewees that accessibility to the site is sometimes difficult. There are very few parking spots or parking lots for people to park in order to get down to the site. And then as well in the spring and summer, as you'll see in the picture that's on the left there, a lot of the pathways and the bridges are flooded. Now, this is to be expected. This was how it was planned, as it is still within the floodplain. However, it is a concern for some community members that perhaps might need to be addressed in the future. So slide 13 shows our overall SWOB analysis on the project that we were able to be done. So the strengths for the CRRP was that all of the project objectives were achieved, so yay. Weaknesses were that, like I said, the pedestrian pathways flood in the spring, and the third-party review that resulted in the extended timeline and budget for the completion of the project. However, moving forward, that won't be a problem. However, if there are potential other opportunities for restoration projects in the future, that may be something to consider and use as an example in the future. Opportunities for where to go with the Carp River Restoration Project in the future are, like I said, to employ citizen science and the use of community members in either monitoring and information gathering in the city, or in the site, pardon me, to support the LID implementation elsewhere in Ottawa. So our case studies that we had done identified that there are very few examples, with the exception of Toronto and the GTA, of low impact development being used within Ontario and Canada as well. And so having this as an example of green infrastructure and LID use in Ottawa And I should mention here as well that there was also LID that was implemented at the Tanger Mall. However, our project didn't really get into that, but that is another example that could be focused on in the future for academic involvement. But it's one of the few examples in Ottawa and Ontario that can now be referenced for future implementation and supporting sustainable development in urban centers in the future. Barriers include invasive species coming in, and so those will need to be monitored and watched. The muddled roles and responsibilities of key players. So in our analysis and trying to gather our information, there were numerous different community involvement groups, the Conservation Authority, the city, various other not-for-profits across the city, that kind of a thing. Information on the project was all very much scattered in a whole bunch of different locations, and sometimes information contradicted one another. So clearing up roles and responsibilities moving forward amongst stakeholders in the project still, and clearing up and streamlining the information on what was done in the future and any monitoring practices will be extremely useful. Again, there's the lack of a long-term monitoring plan. So one of our case studies also looked at the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority and their monitoring plans. And what they found was that best practices include doing a monitoring, an in-depth monitoring system at least once per year for the 3 years that are mandated by the Ministry of the Environment. And then after that, again, an in-depth monitoring at 5 years, 7 years, and 10 years after the project's completion. And then finally, barriers to implementation include the general barriers to LID implementation across Ottawa and Ontario and Canada, like I've already mentioned. So largely this comes down to the fact that there are very few examples for individuals to turn to reference. So this results in an insufficient use of LID, limited knowledge of technical design and planning strategies, few contractors with hands-on experience, and just generally creates the idea that implementing LID in an urban center can be quite risky and as well costly. Studies have shown that there are large initial implementation costs. However, in the long term, it does become cheaper for the owner of the LID. However, again, a lack of tangible examples makes that a little bit speculative. And so one suggestion that we identified was that municipalities can create incentives or credits for homeowners or developers to take advantage of in the future. So I know we've got a couple counselors on the board here, so that might be something to consider in the future. So finally, our recommendations, like I said, creating a central database for information sharing for the monitoring, reports, any baseline information, and just general historical information on the decisions that were made and the studies that were completed, things like that, just so it's easily accessible for anyone looking to get involved in the project or learn more about the project. Increasing academic research involvement is probably going to be quite important. You know, harnessing and facilitating relationships with researchers at academic institutions within the city and gathering students or even master's or PhD students to complete either monitoring research within the stream itself or on LID implementation more widely across the city, or even do evaluations such as the one that we've just done, putting out a call for volunteers and or having what we call at the University of Ottawa community service learning projects, which are essentially coursework for the students that result in a project being done for a community member, and it's completely volunteer. And so the student gets a credit and the individual gets whatever they would like out of it. Creating a clear division amongst responsibilities amongst players in the future. So which part of this project will the city be responsible for monitoring versus the MVCA versus perhaps citizens? Things like that would be something to be considered. Encouraging the implementation of LID elsewhere in the watershed, which I think would start with an evaluation of what's been done at Tanger Mall and moving from there. Improving the capacity for citizen science of the CRRP. Again, that might be slightly out of date depending on where you guys are at with your app and the signage and whatnot down at the site. I have not visited it recently, so I apologize. And then finally, developing and implementing a long-term monitoring plan that's at least 10 years, so up until 2028. So hopefully that wasn't too rambly and a lot of information all at once, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today and present the information to you all. So thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions for me? Glenn, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. The Carp River is just less than a kilometer away from where I'm sitting right now. So I'm been very interested in this project for a while. Not so much questions, but two comments for you. One is on the citizen science and engagement. I think that's really important. And I would love to help facilitate or connect people in the community who might be interested in getting involved. At a City of Ottawa level, we see so much engagement from people in email writing campaigns whenever there is a climate or environment related issue. And I'd love to find a way to harness that interest that comes in by email and actually get people rolling up their sleeves and helping out. And the other thing on the muddled roles and responsibilities, this is an issue here. We actually ran into it this week where there were overflowing garbage containers along Carp River. And for some reason, our city staff thought it was a responsibility of the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority to empty these. And we got them emptied by city staff, but still haven't resolved who exactly is responsible for it. Now that's a recreation issue and not really a watershed or conservation issue, but it's a good example of how we're still very much figuring out who's responsible for what. This particular piece of river is not very long, but it actually touches on 4 different municipal wards in Ottawa. So maybe if I could offer as well, I'd be very happy to take the lead on it and work with the different departments and staff here at the City of Ottawa and make sure that we do have a really clear charter of responsibility and understand who's responsible for what on everything, on all the barriers that you've identified. I think that's a good first step that we need to figure out. So thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? John Carreau.
A comment really, and thank you for the presentation, Elizabeth. An ongoing offer of assistance from Ottawa Eco Talent Network to continue this kind of partnership with Mississippi Valley, which is kind of easy because I sit on the board as well, as you know, and am a co-chair of the Eco Talent Network. One of the areas that, from a timing point of view, of course, the project proposals come pretty soon. So come November, if there are ideas that come forward that people would like to do further academic research, let's keep that in mind. And I guess finally, Elizabeth, if you could maybe talk a little more about the importance of monitoring to adaptive management, please.
Sure. Is there a specific part that you'd like me to speak more about, or just?
Well, the critical role that it plays in terms of one of the things we tried to emphasize when we did the study with you is the role of adaptive management and how important monitoring is to it.
Correct. Yeah. So what we found through our research is that monitoring needs to happen. There needs to be clear guidelines about what the indicators are going to be that will be used, and ensure that it occurs, annually for the first couple of years and then biannually after that, just to ensure that complete monitoring does occur. And the role of adaptive management was something that we definitely highlighted on or something that we focused on for report itself. However, I kind of took that away for this presentation. But the role of adaptive management in this project itself was quite important. It was used in some of the decision-making that went on even as the restoration project was undergoing completion. And so being able to have a set guideline of the indicators that you want to monitor, and doing those checks regularly, even not if it's necessarily an official check done by the MVCA or by the city, for example, but even just regular updates by the citizens that are out in the area. Having regular updates allows you to keep track of things that might change and address them as soon as possible, rather than waiting an extremely long amount of time to address them later and perhaps have to do more serious more serious like reevaluations after the fact. So,
Timely interventions.
thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
All right, are there any other questions or comments? All right, so thank you very much, Elizabeth, for your time and presentation. And I'm actually going to build on your presentation and actually address, I think, some of the concerns that you raised, and let people know what actually other things that are going on in the site. So I'm going to switch over now to my presentation, and I have to go to, I wonder, am I allowed to do a show? Okay, share screen, I can do that. Share, hold on here. All right, can everyone see this Carp River classroom presentation?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna have to rush, I've only got 10 minutes. I could speak for an hour on this. So you're only getting the 10-minute version. The Carp River Living Classroom was endorsed by the Board of Directors in December of 2018. And it actually is a set of programs and experiences that will be overlaid on a portion of the restoration site that is now going to become a new conservation area. So the outline of this, it's a multi-year project. Not the restoration, but the living classroom is a multi-year project. It'll probably go over the next 5 years for reasons I'll get into. And we'll be talking about then the phases of the living classroom project, the mobile EcoTrekker app, and then what is happening next. All right, so you heard about the Carp River Restoration Project, the living classroom portion and the conservation area, which will begin in 2020, is the 2-kilometer section that lies between Richardson Side Road and the Queensway. And it should be noted that the portion that's south is another 2 kilometers, but the Queensway completely cuts off any pedestrian access. And it's also, although it's a nice area in the south, it's not as self-contained and frankly as beautiful, as naturally beautiful. And you can see I actually included some pictures because from the aerial you can't tell what it looks like, but there is the habitat pond up at the north, where's Richardson Side Road up there at the north upper left-hand corner. There are the wet meadows, there's 4 kilometers, there's a 4-kilometer loop that runs along the site. It's not completed yet due to Campo Drive extension, but it will be completed at the south end. All the pathways and meander restoration. And it's, you can see that there's the heart of this, of what this is about is that you have this green infrastructure restoration in the heart of a semi-urban area. And so you're surrounded by the Canadian Tire Center, your commercial businesses and houses, and yet you can step into this sort of magical place that, as it shows here in the next slide, slide 4, is really where nature has returned. These are just some of the shots I've taken over the years of this site, and except for one in the bottom left. And the site is now one of the top 4 shoreline birding spots by the Ottawa Club. And 2 of the species that are on this page are species at risk in Ontario, the barn swallow and the snapping turtle. So, and when you go down to the site, and I encourage anyone who has the time to go down to the site and walk along it in morning or evening when most of the wildlife is out, you'll see people biking, skateboarding, walking, running. I've seen people cross-country skiing there in the winter. And you think of all the recreation this is offering, as well as the ecosystem services of stormwater runoff, filtering, absorbing and releasing water into the Carp River. So the living classroom, as I mentioned, is a set of, call it programs and experiences that overlay the 2-kilometer section there between Richardson Side Road and the Queensway. And these are the things that the living classroom is covering. And one is just a place for where you see families and people to learn about wetlands and biodiversity. And there will be a series of interpretive signs installed. There are 7 going in the near term. There'll be welcome signs. In addition, we have, MVCA has an education coordinator, Sarah O'Grady, and she will be working with schools to create a curriculum that will allow schools to come on site. There's also been a plan to actually run MVCA run type programs on site with and raise money to have dip nets and things for the kids to get involved in the site and learn from it. It's a site for citizen science, and one of the things that we're doing is we're ready to launch an iNaturalist project or set of projects for the Carp River as a whole, and there'll be two for the restoration site. One of those will be for the living classroom, which will cover this 2-kilometer section. So what'll happen is there's actually a whole bunch of observations already in for this site, and it will collect all those and take more. So it's all the turtle sightings and bird sightings and plant sightings that people are already doing. And there's already an eBird hotspot, a couple of them online, so you know all the birds that people are seeing on the site too. And then finally, eventually this is supposed to be an LRT phase 3 stop, and I know that's kind of a gleam in the eye of the mayor. But eventually there is supposed to be an LRT stop right there around Campo Drive. And there's nothing that in the future with some of the amenities we want to add to the site that wouldn't potentially draw people like Y Marsh, the famous Y Marsh experience, to have ecotourism out in the area. So they have a team of people that we meet monthly, and it consists of MVCA, the Friends of the Carp River, Ottawa Stewardship Council, and our flagship fundraiser, Marianne Wilkinson. She and Mike Cleland of Cleland Jardine Engineering in the area are our fundraisers. We already have $60,000. We will need more raised for this project. We've laid out 3.5 phases for the project. We kind of got whacked by COVID-19. We were going to have a great big launch in June. So we are now soft launching next month. We will have the signage that I mentioned, welcome signs. There'll be a video, there'll be a brochure that you can download that talks about the trail and the interpretive sign information. iNaturalist projects will be launched. There'll be EcoTrekker, which I'll be getting to, which is the mobile app. And that's just the start of what we plan. The next phases will involve observation tower, potentially an osprey tower, benches, bat boxes, bird boxes, various other things. And then finally, there's a need for what we call River House, which I'll get into, which is a part of an education hub. All right, so the EcoTrekker app is something you would download to your smartphone. It runs on either Android or Apple, and it will be free, GIS enabled. So as you walk the site, and it's set up for kids, I should indicate, like maybe up to the age of 14. As you walk the site, it buzzes at you, and different things pop up, and it tells you about aspects of the site. And it has this encyclopedia of things that you see on the site, the plants, the wildlife. There's some historical notes and geographical features. And you can take interactive quizzes and win badges. And this was mostly developed primarily with volunteer labor. Some of it was paid, but there is a small team that is formed that developed this app. And it does have the potential, we'll see how people use it, does have the potential to be adapted for other sites, although that would need probably to be paid for in the future. So we did run this, we ran a pilot with this last year, I think it was in July. Got the bugs out of it, and we've just been waiting to launch it along with the site and get people's feedback on how it will be used. The next steps, the really interesting thing is the Carp River Living Classroom there off to your right is very close to the new stormwater pond being constructed and what is something called River Chase Park, which is a 6-acre park. And we've been working with Jenna Suds, who's the counselor for the area. She has applied for money to get a community building in the future park. And what we have raised with the community is to turn that park into, have all their amenities that they have there that they want, whatever those are, like soccer fields or whatever, and to have their community building, but that have capability to house education programs, and that there are ways to enhance both the park and the building with fundraising dollars that can make it so much more than just a standard suburban park. And we again had everything ready to launch for a community. She was going to have an outreach in March, and then COVID-19 hit. And I had a few meetings with the community association, and they were very interested. And anyway, but that hasn't gone away, and that's phase 3, and that would require probably quite a bit of money. So where we are, there actually is an agreement, draft agreement, I think it's with you, Sally, that Paul Lehman has been working with the city on, that confirms the roles and responsibilities for the site. Who's supposed to get the garbage, who's supposed to do maintenance versus the programming aspect that MVCA will be responsible for. We have to continue to develop partnerships like with Ducks Unlimited, with the Ottawa Riverkeeper, and I'm sure there are others. Outreach to donors, Marianne and Mike Cleland are raring to go and just waiting for the site to get launched, and then begin to do the phase 2 site enhancements. So that's the overview. This is a picture from the June 2018 group who all got together. Our mayor is there, along with some old board members and a team of people, and the partners that are currently working on this together are listed at the bottom. So let me get out of share screen here. We'll go, I'm out. And are there any questions or comments? John Carrillo.
Thank you, Janet. When you talked about linkages to other existing conservation areas, could you maybe give us some indication as to how that might apply to Morris Island?
It was mostly the whether the app could be adapted with a new dictionary. Would have to have a new dictionary and a new GIS map installed, so that as you walked the Morris Island, probably just the causeway, but you know, if you walked the causeway, what were you seeing? What was the information about Morris Island? And so you could use the framework of the app, it would be there, and they developed it so that you could, you know, unplug a dictionary for the Carp River Living Classroom and plug in a new dictionary for Morris Island. So that's the idea of the of using the app in for another conservation area.
So that would equally apply to Milliken Tail?
It could be done for any of them, but I do want to say that it will cost money to do that. But yes, it could be done for Milliken Tail. It could be done for Rideau Valley sites. And what we need to do first is see how this works. And then it's possible, and we have talked about the fact that we could offer this to other conservation areas who would have to, or conservation authorities who would need to fund it, fund the tailoring or the porting, I should say, of the app to a different site.
Thank you.
Could I comment? On the site? I think it's great that we have such a great conservation site close to the urban area. Morris Island is so lovely, but I make it out there once or twice a year, and I'm probably the close end, and I think it's about 40 kilometers out there. So to have something right in the urban area where students and so on can be, and anybody who finds the time to go there is usually thrilled with it. So thanks for all the work on that, Janet and others. Could you give us an idea of what kind of cost? Is this a $1,500 cost or a $3,000 cost, that kind of thing, to develop say a kilometer of trail?
I have absolutely no idea. And I'll tell you why, because I've heard different numbers for how much the whole restoration cost. And I know it increased 2 or 3 or even 4 times more the original number. I have heard anywhere between 17 and 20 million for the total restoration. In which case it would be, if you divide 4 into 20, you get $5 million per kilometer. But honestly, I am not 100% sure of what the total cost for the site was.
What I was hoping that you might have some idea of is just the geo application. I'm aware of the, as you indicated, the tremendous increase as time went along on what everyone expected. But just once the trail is there, then putting that geo application in that you spoke about and sounded appropriate perhaps for other areas like the Morris Island or the Milliken Tail.
I don't really have it I don't have a number that I can provide you, Phil, and I think it would depend on the size of the site and the extent of the dictionary that you would want developed for the site, and how much you could support the development team with actually writing it all for them and just providing them with stuff. So, you know, we tried, I think there were a number of times we discussed it with the team, how much it might cost to do another site. I have some numbers, but I'm not comfortable enough with those numbers to share with you. But it's not gigantic numbers. It's not huge.
Thanks very much.
I think Sally wants to make a comment. Sally?
Yeah, I would just say the incremental amount that we paid, you know, was relatively small. It was definitely under 30,000. I can't remember the exact number. But in any event, to Janet's point, it would cost significantly more if we were developing the app from scratch, full cost. So very pleased that we were able to get so many volunteer hours out of the group. And now that we have the structure of the app, the cost to apply it to each CA, we will definitely look into that. But as Janet mentioned, we want to see how it works and how much uptake there is at the site before we look into that. The other thing is, yes, I did receive the draft lease agreement from the City of Ottawa, and obviously I want to have our lawyers look at it just to make sure we're all comfortable with it. And to the point of operations and maintenance at the site, definitely staff are looking at it to make sure it reflects what we had discussed in principle with the city. So probably at the next board meeting, we'll be able to come back and get board approval on a lease agreement that we've properly vetted.
All right, the good news is that in that agreement, it allows us to call it a conservation area. That was really important for our signage. And another point I want to make is that the cost of all of what is going into the living classroom is all being paid for by donations. So there is nothing in any of the levy dollars or anything that is raised that is paid for, that is paying for this site. It is all being paid through donation dollars or grant dollars. And I would say other than some staff time, which of course is covered by MVCA, that's it. And I think the third thing is that this is meant to be a high profile project for MVCA within the City of Ottawa. And to offer, as Phil noted, a place that is much more local than the Milliken Tail to be able to take kids in Ottawa, bus them. And apparently, according to Sarah, it costs twice as much to bus somebody over the City of Ottawa boundary to Milliken Tail. So that it's much more cost effective to be able to bus some kids to the site when there are washrooms available and suitable amenities. Much more cost effective and closer to allow teachers to interact with MVCA on the site. Okay, I guess we can move on then. We have a lot more to get through. So we'll move on then to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on the 20th of May. So I have resolved that the minutes of the Mississippi Valley Board of Directors meeting held on 20 May 2020 be received and approved as printed. I need someone to move. Okay, I see.
I'll
Jeff.
move it, Paul Keogh.
Okay, oh, okay, well, I'll say Paul Kehoe moves and Jeff Atkinson seconds. And then all in favor, I need to see hands or yays or something. Okay, I'm gonna assume that it's carried. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on. All right, business arising. This is actually probably one of the most important, if not the most important item other than the Shabomika Dam on our agenda. So this is the outcome of the 2019 WECI grant application. So Sally, please go forward.
Nope, there we go. Sorry, I had to unmute myself now. Now people can see and hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So At the last meeting, you'll recall that we mentioned that we were still waiting to hear from the province about the WECI grant, and we've now heard back. And the short piece of the news is that we didn't get funding for any of them. So I wanted to start by just giving people a background on the WECI program and how it's administered. So it was established 17 years ago. It's a $5 million envelope that's divided between studies and capital projects. That amount has not changed in 17 years. Had it been at least inflated, annually, it would now be worth 6.6 million. So in fact, de facto, it's been funded over time with the burden being transferred effectively to municipalities or other programs as they're available to fund our infrastructure. Last year, they stopped the practice of allowing for mid-year reallocations. So for example, if a particular project wasn't able to proceed or didn't use the full amount of the grant that they had asked for, those monies were allowed to be returned to the pool and reallocated to other worthy projects. Last year, they stopped that practice, and as you can see, almost $1 million of that 5 million was turned back to the province and was not able to be utilized by CAs. Also last year, they didn't give notice of the WECI grants until June, which is much later than usual, and they actually moved forward the completion date by a month. So as you can imagine, if you're trying to put a tender out on the street, award it, and actually complete it, and particularly in waterworks, which generally speaking on a watershed like ours cannot start till after we've drawn the system down, it makes it almost virtually impossible to complete the projects within the time frame allotted. This year, 30 conservation authorities, applied for 102 projects worth a total of 19 million. Of course, only a fraction of them were able to get funded. So when we submitted our application back in February, we were looking to get 50% funding of those 3 projects you see for a total request of 710,000. And basically, we did not get funding due to oversubscription and relative scoring to other projects that scored higher than us and therefore got that their portion of that very small fund of money. So, there's a lot of things happening in this past year that is encouraging both the province and the feds to re-examine how they're supporting flood and erosion control infrastructure in Ontario and across Canada. And so some of the key things I wanted to highlight to you, you'll remember that Ontario appointed the special advisor last year, and in his report last November, he speaks to the need for the province to provide multi-year funding, that this year-over-year allocation is simply not meeting the needs of conservation authorities and others who have this kind of infrastructure. That the committee that is responsible for administering these funds have written to the director that has oversight of this program, asking them to please reinstitute the in-year reallocation so that every dollar that they in that envelope is allowed to be spent by worthy projects. And then most recently, Conservation Ontario sent a letter to several federal ministers asking that the feds ensure that whatever stimulus programming they come out with, that there is some language and programming that allows for CAs to participate to improve our infrastructure. So, it was a tremendous disappointment to us that we weren't able to get funding because we had done a fair amount of homework. Chris McGuire from this office had several conversations with MNRF rep on the committee to get information. So we really want to look very carefully at the applications that did receive funding this year to better understand what set them apart to make them, well, get scored higher and make the grade and be able to get that limited funding. And have discussions with other WECI members because the MNRF is just one of several members the others are from Conservation Ontario and other CAs. So going to broaden our analysis and our conversations with folks. And our goal ultimately is to develop a strategy for how we're going to move forward with funding of our capital projects. And it starts by prioritizing and making sure that we're entirely transparent and have excellent documentation supporting the priority projects that we have in our capital program and the timing of them, that we've fully exhausted our investigation of other grant opportunities. And if necessary, we need to be prepared potentially to look at financing some projects. So as you know, at our last board meeting, we were able to determine that the Kashwakamak project could be delayed a couple of years. We are far less comfortable with the Shab project being delayed. And so we need to develop a plan A and a plan B, that if we are unable to secure grants for next year, how are we going to move forward with that project? So in summary, I really do think that as the beneficiaries, all our local municipalities and ourselves who have to make those tough decisions on how to, which projects to go forward with and how to finance them, that we need to do a full press on those same entities, you know, the federal ministers, the province, and our member municipalities to gain support and reinforce those other submissions provided by the WECI Committee, Conservation Ontario, and the Special Advisor on Flooding, and really get attention put to this issue. This is a risk management issue. It's not going away. If anything, the recent report published by the City of Ottawa regarding potential changes in climate in this particular area speak to the urgency if we're going to be facing more spiking in terms of the type of events we're dealing with in the watershed, and potential increased potential for drought situations, as coincidentally, you know, we have going this year on the watershed. So our proposal is to come back to the Finance Committee at late August with our initial analysis that would help to inform any discussions around the draft budget later in the year. So that's all I have to say on that. Happy to take questions.
Can I comment, Sally? John Ingles?
Of course.
It may be dangerous to think that MNRF would cooperate more in future. They've been remarkably stingy with money in the last few years on a number of issues. So in the longer term, the question of how you finance these dams, is there any possibility of a CA borrowing money the way municipalities do for infrastructure?
I'm going to turn it over to Ange. I believe, Ange, you're on the line.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, it's a complicated way of doing it, but we did when we borrowed for this building, for example. We just need to run a debenture and have a host. Right now we have Town of Carleton Place for this building. So it is possible. It's you would only borrow for a substantial amount of money though, because there's legal implications, and we can only borrow from certain entities. So Infrastructure Ontario is how this building, the debenture, is handled through Infrastructure Ontario. So I would explore that as an avenue for a possibility for the dams.
Thanks, as a last resort.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any other questions or comments for Sally?
Yes, Faye here.
Okay, Faye?
It said overload of system. Was it because we asked for 3 projects, or was it just the province itself was overloaded with applications? Like,
So this program has been oversubscribed, Faye, for many years. It's chronic. Every year there's more applications than there's money in the bank, and it speaks to the aging infrastructure. Like the dams we're talking about are 100 years old. They've had, you know, some repairs and improvements over time, but they're absolutely at the end of their life cycle, and major investments need to be made. And this is not unique to our watershed. So the need just keeps on getting greater and more urgent, and yet the pool of money is not increasing.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, Phil.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we establish in the design criteria how dangerous this is, that we can pass that along to the WECI people in an application for funding next year. It seems to me unusual that they had we're the 15th from the top in terms of the funding Chatham-Micro Lake Dam and the side part, whereas the Kachewachemak, which we received a report last month saying wasn't quite so dangerous and could be put off for up to 5 years, it was, I think, number 2 on the list. So I think we have to really, I know we've done a lot of work on preparing this for WECI, but maybe we need to speak to the lady from the engineer from the South Nation and impress on her how important this is, and that we're trying to fulfill our mandate. And also, I think it's important that members who have connections with MPs and so on stress to them, this is our core mandate, and we should be funded for the core mandate. And it's not fair that in the time of this co-virus program, where there's all sorts of pressure on municipal budgets, to ask that they fund the complete cost of the reconstruction. The province should bear its load, I believe. And if we have to, and I guess just a final comment, could we look at, as we did in the case of Kachewachemak, is it possible to delay that 1 or 2 years as a way of spreading out the cost so the province could afford to put us on, to get us on the list of WECI funding? And even if we have to, I say, do it over a couple of years, I think somebody mentioned multi-year funding. Well, that's what would really, we could probably work and live with that if we knew what that we were assured that over a 3-year period we were going to have funding. I don't know the engineering challenges that would create, but it's really important that we don't download all this to the municipalities as a way of solving the provincial challenge. Thank you.
If I could just respond to that, Janet. Yeah, Phil, those are exactly the kind of activities and questions we need to be carrying out, and questions to be posed. So that we're totally on the same page with you there.
Yeah, and I was going to add that certainly when Sally and I were speaking about this, you know, most of the resolution is related to staff actions, but I do believe that in sharing the letters and the comments and the arguments for the need for funding, that we do need the support of board members. And, you know, we can certainly talk more about that, or Sally, you can provide more guidance when these communications go out. But we do need the support of our municipal board members in terms of getting the message out to our MPs, MPPs as much as we can. And I guess my other comment would be related to this. And again, there are only, I think, maybe half of the board members here who were present when we did the 10-year capital plan, which involved a few $1 million worth of spending over the 10 years. It did rely on WECI funding to be able to afford it. And so this would have a huge impact on that 10-year plan that we would really have to go back and revisit, which is a major concern. Yes, Sally, you're muted.
So on that note, that's part of what we want to come back to the Finance and Administration Committee with later in the summer, is to identify exactly the potential consequences on the 10-year capital plan.
Okay, are there any more questions or comments before we move to the resolution, which is a very long resolution? I don't know if I need to read the whole resolution. Do people want me to read the whole resolution? Does everyone have the resolution in front of them regarding the staff to board directing staff to rate the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry and area MPPs regarding the funding related to the WECI committee letter and the flooding advisor report, rate the federal ministers as well, and share the above letters with member municipalities and county councils and encourage them to support the initiative, prepare an analysis of past WECI grant applications and funded projects and develop an updated strategy. So in other words, find out what makes it win, and prepare a report for the Finance and Administration Committee that contains the methodology for prioritizing our projects, capital projects, potential grant opportunities, and alternative funding approaches, which will impact the 10-year capital program. So I need someone to move the resolution.
So
Okay.
moved, John Engel.
Teresa Fritz moves. Second to second, please. Right, Kirby Thompson got his hand up just in time. Yep. All right, all in favor of the resolution? I'm seeing lots of hands. I'm going to assume people who aren't showing or raising their hands silently. All right, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, and now we're on to a presentation on the Shabamika Dam Rehabilitation Project by Huron.
Euro, can you speak up, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So just give me a second to load up my screen and we'll be all set. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. So as Sally has informed you, MVCA did not get the WECI funding this year, and in light of this outcome, we are basically developing a revised strategy to bring the Shabamika replacement project to and the finish line. So in my presentation, I just wanted to give you an update where we stand with the project and kind of outline this strategy to move the project forward. Difficult, yeah, moving the slides.
Euro, if you get it into display mode, presentation mode before sharing screen, that can help. So if you unshare and then open it in presentation mode.
Okay, how is this?
That worked.
Okay, yeah. Okay, fantastic. So really quickly, the Shabamika Dam is located in the southwest corner of the watershed, in a remote part of the watershed, just south of the Bongijo Provincial Park. The structure is over 100 years old. It was built at the turn of the last century, really to help with the lumber operations. in the 50s, Mississippi River Improvement Company rebuilt this dam with earth embankments and wooden sluice structure, which was later on replaced by a concrete structure. Then Ontario Hydro did some extensive rehab work in 1988, and after that, MVCA took ownership in 1991 and initiated a few dam safety studies and inspection studies. The last studies are from 2005 and 2015, and both of these studies basically revealed that this structure does not meet the Ontario dam safety standards and should be replaced. MVCA also completed some additional dam inspections in the recent years, and they revealed some additional deficiencies, both structural and seepage and erosion deficiencies were discovered at the dam. So basically, in response to these findings, MVCA initiated a Class CA project for this dam replacement. In 2017, this Class CA was approved last year in 2019, and at the moment, basically, MVCA is proceeding with the detailed design. So in this design stage, it is really important to understand that we are designing and building this dam for the next 100 years, right? And we have basically an obligation during this design to be really considering not only existing watershed management and operational needs, but also the future operational needs. To make sure that this dam has the functionality that we'll need during the entire life cycle of structure, right? So, so what are some of these emerging needs that we can think of? And I'm sure you will all agree with me that probably the first one is increased water demand that we will see in the future. Right? We will see more and competing demands, whether it is for recreation, for drinking water supply, hydropower production, wastewater assimilation, irrigation, right? It's a long list, low flow augmentation. And what we can expect that in the future, we will need to have more precise and frequent water level regulation to help meet this water demand. I guess the second challenge that we will see is a climate change, right? And we will see more extreme events. We will see more localized heavy storms and flash floods. And to cope with that, we will need a system that can have fast operation response times. Then we had a presentation from Elizabeth about the Carp River and the principles of integrated watershed management. Again, integrated watershed management needs some system surrounding it to be efficient. And one tool that will be required in the integrated watershed management is automated operation. Then environmental protection. At the moment, typically we make 20-25 trips to Shabomiga Dam alone every single year, right? So in the future, we will want to reduce the footprint of our operation. And lastly is work safety. We will see more stringent safety measures and rules in the future. Some of the operations that we perform these days, such as the jacking and entering the sluice bay, might not be permitted in the future, right? So these are kind of like the emerging kind of needs that we are considering as part of the detailed design. Now, so what are the design options? So I guess if we really want to be doing the business as usual and looking at the existing needs, operational needs, then the best design option would be a stop-lock gate, right? Which you see on that left side of the slide. Stop-lock gate is a very traditional control structure that's been frequently used in the past. a very simple structure, right? The water is basically regulated by manually adding and removing stop logs. Stop logs are, you know, wooden beams, but it can be also steel or aluminum in some of the new structures. And basically, it's the business as usual. All the dams owned and operated by MVCA are based on stop log operation. Now, if you want to also look at the future and kind of make sure that the design also addressing the future needs, then you may need something like a mechanical gate. So that's the picture on the right shows the bascule gate, which is a bottom hinge crest gate type of mechanical gate. And this type is really the simplest and most frequently used type of mechanical gate, which was designed and developed to be the replacement of wooden flashboards and stop logs, basically. And the operation is very simple. The gate is lifted or lowered by either hydraulic cylinder, or it can be an electrical motor, or it can be just a cable from hoist, you know, and the operation can be fully manual or fully automated if it's automated controller, right? So really, these are the two options that we are looking at. And MVCA, at MVCA we have completed a detailed evaluation of these two options and kind of look at all the advantages and disadvantages of both. And you can find the details in my report, table 2, which kind of it's a long list of all the advantages and disadvantages. At this point, I just want to state that the bascule gate has a number of advantages over stop log gates in all of these categories. The mechanical gate has a very simple operation, has very good performance in regulating water levels, has again very simple maintenance and safe operation, versus stop log gate. Really, the stop log design is not used for frequent operation. It's a number of, it's very labor intensive. It requires at least 2 operators to operate the stop log gate, versus the bascular gate can be operated just by 1 staff or can be fully automated. Then the performance, again, this is a big item. The stop log gates are very imprecise. We can only be regulating the water levels by the height of the stop log gate, which is 1 foot, right? Whereas the mechanical gate can be set basically down to the millimeter, right? We have the full flexibility. And the other advantage is the seepage, right? The seepage is a chronic problem for stop logs. This is not the case for bascular gate. Other issues to mention is, you know, the operations, stop logs often get jammed or even lost during, you know, some high flow operations, whatnot. And I think lastly, the safety is also a major concern, because as I mentioned, the operation, especially during high flows, can be sometimes dangerous, right? Whereas, you know, the operation of the mechanical gate eliminates these potential hazards. Okay, now in terms of the cost projections, so we also looked at the cost projections for these 2 options, which you see on this slide are the Class D total capital cost for the stop log and bascular gate designs. And basically what we see is that the difference between those 2 options is approximately $200,000 or 20%. Now this total capital cost that you see here is really the lump sum that includes the engineering fees for design, for construction, administration, inspection. Number includes the tendering cost, mobilization, and then construction, right? So it's the all-in-one number. So we see that the initial investment is approximately $200,000 more for the mechanical gate versus the spot-lock gate. Now, having said that, when we look at the operation and maintenance costs, we'll see that there might be actually some cost saving because, you know, the operation, there will be much less strict required for the manual operation. It can be operated just by one staff, or just fully automated operation is possible as well, right? So we will see that, you know, mechanical gate might provide some long-term saving potential, right? So overall, it is expected that at the end of the life cycle, the total cost might be similar for all options. So now, really, where we stand with the project. So we did not obtain the WECI funding grant for this year. We also applied for approval for the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act last year, and we are still waiting for the approval from the Ministry of Natural Resources. Once we receive this approval for a preliminary design, we will be ready to complete detailed design stage. Get this project basically shovel ready. Now, as Sally mentioned in her presentation, we are also looking at some other funding opportunities, provincial and federal, and we're also basically looking at the strategy, how we can be more successful obtaining the WECI funding. So there will be a report that will be summarizing findings and kind of the strategy. And by basically now moving the construction to next year, we will have another opportunity to apply for WECI early next year. And then basically, once we secure the funding, we will be able to move into construction after in the fall. I think the mobilization can happen in September, and after the drawdown, the construction basically begin in October, and the project can be completed by the end of next year. And in 2022, the structure should be fully operational and in service. So basically that moves us to the recommendations, the key recommendations. So the first one is to complete the detailed design using manually operated mechanical gate. Again, Szabó-Mika is the first major water control structure in the watershed, and is a very important structure in terms of the watershed management, flood control, and it's well suitable to be equipped with a manually operated mechanical gate. Since we will not be proceeding in construction this year, we are proposing to commence regular monthly dam inspection at this Szabó-Mika dam until the construction, and we are in the process of updating our dam inspection program for this dam, which will be ready starting next month. Basically, starting in July, we will be commencing regular monthly inspections of the dam that will be monitoring any changes, any deficiencies, any related to settlements, dislocations, seepage, erosion, cracks, and all these other problems that might indicate some structural problems with the dam. And then the last recommendation is develop a financing plan to ensure that we can bring this project into finish line in 2021. And with that, that's all what I had, and I thank you for your attention, and please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, so if we could remove your full screen, you're up. So see everybody and know who to call upon.
Right.
All right, open for questions and comments. John Corot.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still a little unclear as to why you would recommend a manually operated system versus a automatic or remote control system. I mean, the price difference didn't seem to be dramatic. Could you give me some further idea why?
Yes, and thank you. This is a good question and good comment, and I didn't elaborate on that. The cost difference is indeed very minimal. It's $30,000. The reason is why I'm not recommending it at this point is that it can be easily retrofitted to a fully automated operation later on, and at the time that we will really have the supporting system in place. And at the moment, we don't know how the system will look like. You know, we might be looking at some SCADA options and whatnot, right? So we need to have the system first figured out that will allow us to implement the dam for fully automated operation. And once that is done, the dam can be retrofitted for automated operation later on very easily. This is not a critical step that needs to be done as part of the construction at this point.
Thank you, although there is a tendency for those types of costs to increase fairly quickly as well as technology changes. And so is there a possibility that as you go forward, you could give us some further detailed rationale for what you've just stated? I guess really what I'm saying is I'm probably more attracted to a fully automated system without going through a transition step.
Yeah, well, that's always an option. I kind of, my vision is, you know, Šabomica is one of those very remote locations, right? The driving time to Šabomica is over 1 hour or close to 2 hours, and so is Kaš, right? So there is a few key structures. Kaš will be also slated for replacement in the next 5 years. So we can think of, you know, doing this at one point of time for more than multiple dams, or we can just go ahead and do it at this point now. But I don't see, you know, us being able to implement the dam for automated operation right from the beginning, because I said we'll need to do some study, some legwork first to get the supporting system in place.
Thank you.
More comments or questions?
John Engel?
Yes, John.
Euro, I guess I wasn't aware that Kaš was a candidate for the Bascule Gate as well. I was going to comment that Kaš Dam is on the main flow of the Mississippi, whereas I think of the Šabomica Dam as being a sub-watershed just like Buckshot Creek, not really any more major than Buckshot Creek. And my question was, why would you put a fine level control on a sub-watershed and not on the Kaš Dam?
Well, you know, the Šab is, as I said, is the first major water control structure, right? And if really the automated operation would make sense, you know, to include, you know, all the key water control structure, right? So so I mean, at least, you know, like how I envision it, you know, it would be the candidate, you know, with the Kaš. I mean, we need to look at, you know, the active storages for this dam, and it's the idea, I guess, behind the automated operation is to operate the system as a whole and not, you know, discretely dam by dam, right? And if we have control of all these major dams, then we can really start to play with the system and optimize it, right? So this is the reason why I think, you know, like Shabomika is a really important structure to be equipped with the manual or automated gate, so that it's part of the system that we can optimize later on, if it makes sense.
Just another comment. I don't know how much of a problem the ice might be, but you wouldn't want to put in a mechanical system and then be stuck in have the gate frozen when you need to move it. So I would just advise to be very careful about ice issues.
Yes, and that's a very good comment. You know, that's one disadvantage of mechanical gates, is that the operation during ice might be problematic. And in our case, really, the winter season is that we don't see much operation happening during winter unless there is really emergency. So the operation would be fairly static during the ice conditions. But always there are some options how to deal with the ice. You know, some of these.
Put in a bubbler.
Yes, they have bubbles or heaters, right? So there are some ways to deal with the ice if needed.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I lost everything for a while here for some reason.
Okay.
It's Paul Keogh. I was looking at your slides and I was looking at your cost projections on your slides, and I was just looking at it and saying, okay, you're talking about putting in the mechanical gate, the steel gates versus stop logs. But if you look at the cost presentation based upon the operation, would I be correct in that the payback period for that is 195 years for the manual one, and it comes out to around 62 years for the one that's automated, just based on your costs?
If I could jump in for a moment here. We didn't look at just payback period. We're looking at operational efficiencies as well. We didn't translate those into specific dollar numbers. I think another piece of information that's not captured in that cost table is during last year's flood, one of our operators got injured operating a log, and he was off work for 4 or 5 months. So there are all these other costs that the current design causes. With the stop logs, you're literally using a 10-foot pole to try to hook onto you know, something, a hook. You know, you're using a hook to capture onto an eye, and you're lifting, you're pulling that out, or you're putting it in. And then under high flows, what happened last year was that pole kicked back at him and hit him in the chest, and he was off for 5 months. So the health and safety risks of the old style system are very real, and they cost us 5 months WSI time. So, and we
related to the fully automated versus the manual bascule. The cost saving there, was that not your question, Paul? Sorry.
No, my cost saving, I was just looking at the difference over your stop logs was 195,000, and yet your operational costs are only a difference of 1,000. So if I just do the simple math and saying, okay, it's $1,000 different, divide that, you come back with 195 years before it pays back for itself in straight operational maintenance costs. And if you look at the 227,500, which has a $3,500, that takes it down to around 61 years. So you're actually a little bit better on the remote, but it's still a long time when you start looking and saying, okay, something's going to be, you know, twice the lifespan of the system or whatever. When you start looking at it from a straight dollar value, and it doesn't look like much when you say it's only 20%, but it's a lot when you're looking at OMM costs associated with it over that period of time. And I appreciate the health and safety aspect, but you know that is there for numerous dams out there already on the system, on the Rideau and everywhere else. There's numerous stop log dams. They seem to have been the dam of choice and still seem to be. That's all. I was looking at it straight from a dollar value.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yes, I'd like to ask a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Phil.
Um, in the last presentation on the Cache Dam, you sort of gave us the engineering report showing that it didn't meet the standard of a crisis, I guess you'd say, whereas this one does. What would be the challenge if we were to, you're asking for us to fund this all in 1 year, and if it goes to the local municipalities to come up with that, if we can get WECI funding, I believe that's, or some other funding, I believe this is an appropriate project to say, let's do it in 1 year. What bothers me a bit is if I have to go back to the municipality I represent, it's over $550,000 will be the extra cost we'll be asking the city of Ottawa to undertake in 1 year. Tough enough if that were spread over several years. Anyway, so that's a cost. So I guess my question is, what would be the, if there were a catastrophic failure, is that likely? And would it lead to big downstream destruction, which wasn't the case at Cache? Is that the case here? Is it more, you know, are more people closer to the downstream end and the lake itself? That we just have to do this in a 1 year time. I think given enough time, this is the sort of thing that we can bring support from our local, from the WECI people to actually fund this. I'm hopeful that with your study that showed it was in such bad shape, we might get more traction at the WECI level. Wait, could you give me some feedback on that, please?
Yeah, so really, you know, when we look at the funding that is available provincially for WECI, you know, it's limited and available for basically all the dam structures in the province, and one factor that is important for the committee to select projects is the hazard class, right, for these structures, and you know, in Shabomica, similarly to Cache, are both classified as low hazard structures, right? There are some structures that were funded this year. If they fail, they would cause catastrophic failures, such as, you know, washing away a 401 near Halton, right? So this is what are we dealing with it. As I said, you know, the funding is limited, and there are some, you know, criteria such as, you know, really the hazard that's involved. So with Shabomica, it's very similar to Cache. It's a low hazard potential structure, and if the structure fails, the economical and environmental losses are fairly low. And we don't expect any loss of life either, right? So,
why have a dam at all? You know, I mean, that's one point, but I don't think at this point we are asking to actually confirm expenditure. We're simply asking the board to confirm an approach to the dam. Is that not the dam design, which is the middle option of a manually operated mechanical dam? So there isn't yet a commitment that we have to make to go forward with this with funding that we don't have at this point in time, right, Sally?
That's correct. We're looking for agreement in principle to this design approach because we want to get a shovel-ready project completed, right? So if we can get the design done and agreement in principle on this approach, then we can market that to different grant sources as they arise for funding. And just to your point earlier, Phil, by no way are we committing to 1 year funding bump on this. As Ange mentioned earlier, we are considering financing of this project as a potential solution, which would allow those costs to be defrayed over a period of years. And also you mentioned phasing. Maybe we are able to phase this project to do phase 1 next year, phase 2 another year, et cetera. So these are all the options we would look at. But at this point, we need to have agreement from the board that this kind of mechanical system is appropriate for moving forward.
I wouldn't mind kind of getting an idea from the board as to the level of support for this particular approach that we're asking them to do. So
Could I have a word just before you go to that, Madam Chair?
Right.
I have no problem with the concept of, I'm sort of in favor of what John Carew and others have suggested, that the automated system may be best, so I don't mind spending the money. It's just the nature of the resolution says to ensure completion of the shadow rehabilitation in 2021. I would be more comfortable if it said enhance the probability of completion in 2021, because that's not what the resolution says. And I can see going back to on bended knee to the treasurer of the city saying, I need another $550,000, because as I read the resolution, that's what it says now. So if a friendly resolution would be enhance the probability, I would be supportive. Thank you.
Or we could just take in 2021 out, which would be simpler,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay, John Carew, yes, a comment?
Yeah, I would actually have a preference for just removing the date, because there's a bifurcated conversation here. One's funding strategy, the other is really wanting to have a shovel-ready project. But if it's a shovel-ready project that's a low hazard, that figures into, I think, an ultimate board decision as to what those funding priorities should be. So I think it's good to give direction that this is a potential shovel-ready project. I'm good with that part of the recommendation, and thank you.
Okay, so we can amend the sorry, Sally, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to make people aware that one of the reasons we're looking for a direction on this now is because we are in the midst of detailed design, and so we need to give the engineering firm direction. So part of our holding pattern at this point is to be able to tell them, okay, which is it, A or B?
All right, so I want to get a sense for the support for this particular approach to the design. So I'm going to read the resolution as it is written, but with the removal of the date. So resolved that the board direct MVCA staff to complete detailed design of the Shabamika Lake Dam water control structure using a manually operated mechanical bascule gate for water level regulation. B, commence regular monthly inspections of the Shabamika Lake Dam as described in this report under construction until construction begins. And C, develop a financing plan to ensure completion of the Shabamika Lake Dam rehabilitation, period. So that is what is currently on the table. There has been discussion of the going to the fully automated version of the bascule gate. I'm going to I guess the best way to get a read is how many people are in support roughly for this, for going with the manually operated mechanical structure. Do we have a support for that, or do people prefer the automated version? Trying to get a sense what we've got.
John Engels, manual gate.
Okay.
Manual.
I'd prefer the automated, but if we're not ready for the automated and the manual fits better over the short term, then it makes sense to go with the manual.
Okay.
I reluctantly agree with Jeff's comment there. If we're not ready, let's give it a try, and prayerfully in the next budget or whatever, we can add the automation feature. It was mentioned that in the report only one person was required to operate the thing. I suspect you're still going to have to send 2 people there just for safety. But anyway,
All right. So I'm kind of sensing we're leaning towards the direction of the resolution as it is currently written.
Yes, I would just add one caveat, not to the resolution itself, but I think as we look at financing, we shouldn't preclude consideration of an automated system. That doesn't mean that the design work shouldn't go ahead with just the manual. I'm okay with that. But I wouldn't want to preclude that when we look at the dollars and cents aspect, we also look at an automated option as well. Not from a design point of view, but from a financing point of view.
Right.
Would it be a difficult to ask of the design people to show what the automated one would look like? And so that we might, as we go to tender, we could actually get not the estimated cost difference, but the real cost difference. Like we carry a pretty high contingency factor, 30%. You know, so I think it would be worthwhile seeing what does the people who have to you know, put the nuts and bolts in, screws and stuff like that, see what they really say. Sometimes they'll surprise you up. But
right. So I think we can put that direction to staff in the minutes as part of the.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Just I'm being supportive of John and saying, in the long run, I'd sure as heck like to see us going to automated. It's a heck of a long drive out there to pull a log, and so or to turn a chain or something like that, unless you get somebody local to do it. Thank you.
Right. All right. We're at 3 o'clock, so we're getting to 3 o'clock here. So so I read the resolution with the amendment to remove the in 2021. I need someone to move.
I'll move.
All right, Teresa.
Second it.
Second by Joan Perot, or is second
Oh,
by
John. If John is seconded, I'll go with his. I'll let him. He'll be. He's the prestige and pass.
All right, all in favor? All right.
I'm in favor.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you, Yura. All right, I know Glenn Gower has to leave in a few minutes, and he is hoping to get to the COVID report. So Sally, if you could get to the COVID report, that would be great. Thank you. Which is next on the agenda.
I also have to leave. It's Teresa after this presentation. My apologies.
And so do
Okay.
I. It's Bill here.
Okay, I will quickly go through this then. So I would say that operations are proceeding much as they are at your various municipal offices and businesses. Most people working from home, heightened cleaning, you know, restrictions on meeting rooms, just directional signage in offices, and we have several standard operating procedures that we put in place, both that are generic and then unique to our operations. Most operations are proceeding as normal and did pretty much throughout. So our dam operations, planning and permits, water resource engineering, very limited impacts on our day-to-day operations. And in fact, kudos to staff. We've actually received comments back that we're one of the few organizations that are keeping the planning and permitting processes going on schedule. Effective right now, all conservation areas are open. They all have signage and directional signage where it makes sense. The washrooms are due to open this weekend, and the cleaning requirements on those public washrooms is quite significant for us, and that's where a lot of our the time implications on the organization are going to be felt. And with the opening of the washrooms, we're going to be uncovering the parking meters, and so hopefully we'll be able to resume getting some revenues on that. At the mill in particular, all activities remain canceled at the gatehouse. The education programming, i.e. the summer camp as well, has been canceled. The museum opens this weekend, and I encourage you all to come out for Father's Day and let people know that the museum is open. And we do have to limit people going through, and there is a pre-registration or registration on site, and this is imposed by public health to ensure that should they have to do any tracing after the fact of somebody who tests positive, that they have the names and contact information of those people. So We are looking at restricting use of the upper parking lot for accessible vehicles only, and that's both to enable people to visit the museum and for wedding parties. The weddings, I'm going to jump down to the bottom there, they are still limited to a maximum of 10 people, including the officiant. And on that basis, we are asking if the board would consider reducing the rental rate to reflect the much lower operating cost to us to set up and tear down a wedding party of such a small number. And we have only set out a very limited number of picnic tables, and the play structures remain closed. At Purdon, because the boardwalks are only 3 feet wide, we are recommending that people wear masks and that they limit their time there. At Morris Island, which apparently was very, very busy this weekend, the community group that we normally partner with that does shares in the washroom and waste management has understandably withdrawn that support this year. So that's another example of where we're going to be incurring additional costs to adhere to recommendations of public health. Palmerston Conato, we have an ongoing relationship with North Frontenac on that, and they work with a local community group to see that those facilities are maintained. And we've spoken to them about the COVID restrictions and how they're planning to ensure that they're maintained. And then KMP, no change whatsoever. The one thing I should let you know is during this peak season, we're currently looking to do washroom cleaning twice a day. But as we move through the season, we may reduce that to once a day, because especially if you consider a facility like Purdon, we're exploring cost partnership options there, but it's a huge impediment, as is Morris Island. These facilities are literally, you know, an hour away from us, and to do them twice a day is quite onerous. The one thing I need to go back very briefly, I mentioned at the museum being open 10 to 4, it should have read 10 to 3. Because of those washroom cleaning requirements, that last hour, it's actually a staff member going and doing all those sort of cleanings at the mill washroom facility. So that should read 10 to 3. So in terms of our other programming, it's the National Systems Program is taking a fairly significant reduction in what we're doing. But we are looking through the work we're going to do on a modified education program of channeling that sort of science aspect into a stewardship program on the watershed, a more robust one than we've done to date. So our goals for this modified education and stewardship program is to inform the public about the watershed, to engage them in discussing watershed issues, which is a tremendous tie-in to the work we're doing on the watershed plan, and then to encourage them to participate in monitoring their lake and understanding and sharing those results. So these are the types of things that we're looking at doing specifically. The Water Ranger program is a long-standing program that's been active in our watershed, and we have traditionally partnered with them. So this is just an opportunity for us to co-promote and help facilitate rollout of that program to other lakes within the watershed. And then the pop-up outreach tent is really targeted to waterfront, where there's people who may or may live within our watershed and may or may not understand the issues we're facing, and engaging them in watershed issues and how they can be good stewards. So the video promotional has no cost, it's in-house staff. The Water Ranger program, we are looking to reallocate $4,000 from what would have been the camp program into this program. And similarly, the pop-up outreach tent, $1,100. So, and this is monies that is a straight transfer out of monies that would have been spent running the summer camper monitoring program into this alternative approach. So lastly, what you're seeing here are the cost implications we've incurred as an organization directly related to COVID. So you'll see the costs at the top were as of closing of the books at the end of May. And then these are additional costs that we're projecting at this time to year end for a total of just under 140,000. Now the next page, what we see here is potential savings because we're not running those other programs. So the net lost savings associated with COVID to the organization, we're looking at a loss of around 90,000. And so the recommendation at this point to the board is to allow reallocation of funds to deliver an alternative education stewardship program and to introduce a new rental rate for parties under 10 of $250.
I would be supportive of that. Unless you're
Any questions or comments?
My only comment might be that if you're trying to, like at Morris Island, it's almost a terrible logistical problem trying to service washrooms there. We used to have some really good supporters along the road there into Morris Island. Could we not like pay somebody to go there for less than what it costs us to drive there and do the work? And there are really dedicated, reliable people who I think would respond to the chance. If you have to, it'd be nice if you could get it as a volunteer, but if you can't, pay them and save twice a day going out there is an impossible feat for the minimum, the modest staff that we have at MBCA. And I think the same thing would apply for the couple of weeks, for the 3 weeks or so we'd have to do at the Purton Conservation Area. To have a Johnny on the spot or whatever they call those toilets type things, and clean it a couple of times a day for somebody along that road. I'm sure they'd be pleased to have the ability, the opportunity to serve a little bit and gain some money with it if we can't get the regular.
Sally, could you take that under advisement? All right, thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to read the motion. Resolved that the board approve reallocation of up to $5,100 in unspent funds from the monitoring and education programs to enable delivery of an enhanced stewardship and outreach program and introduction of a new wedding rental rate of $250 for the parties of 10 or fewer. Need someone to move?
I would move that.
Okay, Phil moves, Jeff seconds, Jeff Atkinson seconds, all in favor?
I'm in favor.
Motion in favor, seeing carried, motion is carried. Thank you very much. Excuse me. All right, we are now moving on to the interim financial update by Angela.
Angela, can you just say something so we know that we can hear you?
Yep, I'm here. I'm just going to share the screen now. Oh, share screen. Anyone? How's that? Is everybody on seeing that slide?
We can see you.
Yes.
I can see her.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll go quickly through this. Here we go. Okay. So on the this report follows along with Sally's, although hers is different because her report focuses on just the COVID amounts that we've incurred or project to incur for COVID related. And my report and projections is for the entire operation or entire organization. So you will see differences, and it's probably confusing as to how her numbers are different than mine. Okay, so at the end of March, we presented in April the Q1 report and gave you a look at where our year-to-dates were and showed that our revenues and our expenditures were on target. We were at about 25%, and now we are just shy of 5% the half-year mark, and we are a little bit low, but for expenditures, and a little bit low on revenues, but it's not concerning at this point. Next month at our July meeting, we'll be presenting the Q2 report. That'll give you, every month will give you a better, more accurate review of the projections. So right now, it looks like we're pretty much on target for this time of year. Not concerned about the provincial transfer payment. You'll note that it's 0, but we have received notification that we will be receiving that. So when it comes in, that will reflect in the year-to-dates. So right now, our revenues are lower for user fees, for visitor services, and for education programs, of course. But planning and regulations revenues are still quite strong. And for this time of year, that's we've went back historically for 5 years. And I'm expecting that June, July, we should plateau or not see the big volume that we've got right now and have been experiencing. So right now, our revenues are not too bad a shape, but that's largely because planning has been so busy. But I do expect for those to drop a little bit over the summer, June and July, and then they always pick up. The 5-year trend have always picked up in September and to the end of the year. So if the pandemic doesn't affect that, if we can go on our historical trends, it should recover again in fall. So hopefully our projections will be on the low side at this point for revenues. Expenditures, we're on target. No concerns there other than COVID limitations, and our expenditures for responding to the pandemic has increased, of course. So unsuccessful in our WECI notification, as discussed in the previous reports and presentations, we'll be bringing back funding options for the board or for the finance committee later this year, probably in September or August, to discuss what the options will be for borrowing or financing of some need. Impacts on our user fees, going through the year-to-dates, of course, visitor services has been impacted. The Milliken Tail rental fees, of course, has been impacted. Parking revenues at our sites. And like I say, the planning and regulations revenues have been quite strong, and they remain quite strong for the entire start of the year. So that's been encouraging, although exhausting for the planning staff, I'm sure. So our CMOG grant, or Canadian Museum Operating Grant, at the end of the Q1 report, I was not very optimistic that that funding could go ahead or would go ahead because they had closed museums in the province due to the pandemic. But since the government has asked, they've done the call for applications, and so we've submitted like we have any other year. So I'm a little more encouraged that that program will still carry on, and hopefully we hear good news from that when the funding announcements happen. Canada Summer Jobs. We did not include any funding coming in from Canada Summer Jobs in the budget because we were not successful in 2019, and we didn't feel that we would be successful again. So we did not want to bank on that coming in. So we didn't include it in the budget, but we have received notification that we are successful in receiving 2 positions, one for 16 weeks and the other for 8 weeks. And so those 2 funding opportunities that they've sent us are for 100% Canada Summer Jobs, as you've probably heard in the media. So all it will cost us is our WSIB and employer expenses, like the employer portion of EI and CPP. So that's a very, very good program for us. So we are going to proceed with a monitoring student that was included in the budget, and our automated sensing technician. We will carry on with those 2 positions for this summer. The monitoring program, the water quality baseline monitoring project with the City of Ottawa, that was at risk earlier on this year because of the pandemic. And so we've received from the city that the program will continue just at a reduced rate. And so it's administered through a special levy on our budget that we would, it's included in the budget at $61,000. program will be reduced down to 36,000. So we are losing a bit of special levy amount by about 25,000. And so to offset that, we've scaled back the monitoring program due to the funding. And one monitoring employee that was dedicated for the monitoring program, when that program was at risk, a sharing agreement was discussed with Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and we are now going to share that staff person with Rideau Valley to conduct the septic inspection and reinspection programs. And they will work for RVCA. RVCA will reimburse us for those hours that the staff person works with them, which ends up generating revenue for us for at about $22,000. So that's in my report. That wouldn't be in Sally's projections. We've got some revenue coming in that we had not budgeted for. Expenditures and projects not proceeding. In the Q1 report, those have not changed. We are not going to carry on with our timesheet software project, which was estimated about $10,000. And we won't be attending the Latranel conference this year due to it being canceled. So, and our summer student positions at the mill for the education program and the museum, and that will save about $22,000 this year. Those are savings that are projected out and found. And then we have the COVID related costs. So we've had our increases due to the pandemic for additional cleaning products, protection equipment, personal protection equipment, additional mileage for staff to travel to and from job sites as we're not traveling together. We're taking 2 vehicles, that's increased costs, as well as increased staff time for increased cleaning protocols. So we have had to do additional cleaning, which costs us money. And the cleaning responsibilities as we go forward, if we end up cleaning washrooms, which we will on the weekends, it's not a monetary value to have our staff go and an increased cost to us personally. It is an increase in their toil, so their time off in lieu balance. So if they work a Saturday and Sunday cleaning the washrooms from site to site, we owe them time off in lieu for those 2 days that they've worked on a weekend. So it'll end up causing a deficit in our staff levels when those staff need to take their time off to take care of those toil balances. So we're continuing to work from home and as much as possible, and that's working out well. So now my new financial impact projection for the end of the year with the information we have right now. At the last report, we had predicted $150,000 deficit. We're getting better with our planning fees and with the CMOG grant possibilities. It's looking more favorable now. So I'm projecting a deficit of $74,000. That deficit is still a large concern, but you do have money in the operating reserve that the surplus last year and previous years have built the balance up, and I provided that in the report. So your December 31st balance of that operating reserve was $918,000. So that is what that operating reserve is exactly for, is these unknown pandemics, and hopefully we never experience one again, but we do have funding there to bring our bottom line back up at year end if it's still needed by then. Any questions?
Great. Any questions for Ange? Comments? Sorry, was that you, Kirby, raising your hand? No? Okay.
No.
Okay. I just want to check that I still have a quorum here.
You do, I've checked it. You're good.
Okay, I'm not sure because there's so many people on telephone that I don't know who they are, so. All right, so no comments or questions for Ange. I think we can move on to the next report, and I think this is the one that requires another resolution. So if we can get through that quickly. Next is up is Matt Craig.
I'll be quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
There's no presentation. It's a staff report, and it's simply the regulation requires the authority to appoint an officer to enforce the regulations. We have 2 staff members, myself and Andy Moore, that have been appointed. We did have, we don't want to keep talking about this, but we did have a record number of permits. That means a record number of compliance checks are required. The person that we are going to appoint has worked with in the authority in a variety of roles. She's currently the staff member working with the Rideau Valley and the septic system office. So she's getting good experience in regard to the building code and those regulations. And she's worked in the monitoring department, and she's also been working on permits with planning and regulations. And of course, she's qualified as she's passed the provincial offenses training provided by Conservation Ontario. So appointing this person will assist the existing enforcement officer in violations and compliance, and they will be working directly with them in a secondary role for now, learning the ins and outs of enforcement and compliance. Thank you.
All right. So we have a resolution here. Resolved that the Board of Directors appoint Emma Deo to enforce Ontario Regulation 153/06 and Ontario Regulation 120/90 of the Conservation Authorities Act. Someone to move, please. Anyone to move?
Paul Keogh will move.
Don't all jump in. I need. All right, Kirby has moved.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who?
Thanks,
Paul
Krista.
Kehoe and Paul Kehoe second. Thank you. All in favor? All in favor?
I'm in favor.
All right. I think the motion is carried with everyone I can see anyway. All right. So now we move on to the next item, which is the County of Frontenac septic service report. So Sally, if you could
My
get.
apologies, Madam Chair, I meant to leave.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Sorry it went on so long. All right, I still have a quorum. Who's counting here?
I'm having a challenge here. No, you don't.
All right, I don't know who, there's a whole bunch of people on phone, so I just don't know who they all are.
Hi, it's Bev. Are you counting the people on phone?
We have, I see 6 people on phone. So we have Bev is one of the people. Who else is on phone?
Angela's on a phone.
No, I need to know what phone members are on the phone, please.
It's Shannon here. The 006, that would be staff. That would be our MVCA number.
So we have John Inglis and Bev on phone then, right? Okay, I know I have Bev. Who is the other person on phone?
Shihiro Kanelik.
No, I know. I'm sorry. Who is the other? Are there any other board members than Bev on phone?
Well, John.
Okay, John. Okay, good. All right. So we have 2 people on phone, Sally. So now how are we doing?
Where are we there?
Yeah, just speaking.
Sorry, I lost my connection, so.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll do the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got 10 people, so we're.
You on visual here?
No, we're still fine. Okay, Sally, we're fine.
Okay, great.
All right, so let's move on to the septic service. Could you do it really quickly, please?
Yep. Okay. So there it is. And share. Okay, very quickly. We support several municipalities in the watershed for septic reinspection programs. In Frontenac County, we share in septic inspection responsibilities with the Lennox, the Frontenac Lennox Addington Public Health Unit, and they have given notice to the area municipalities that they serve that they will no longer be doing inspections under Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code. We already work in partnership with Ottawa Septic System Office, which is a partnership of ourselves, South Nation and Rideau Valley, as well as we have a bilateral relationship with Rideau Valley to deliver services in the watershed. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, we conduct many inspections and re-inspections every year, and we have very skilled, knowledgeable staff in this regard. So what's being proposed is basically expanding the partnership to include Quinte and Cataraqui region so that we can offer services across Eastern Ontario in terms of the full scope of septic permitting and inspection and re-inspection services for individual lots that meet the small system requirement or guidelines. So the advantages of this are numerous. The septic program itself is designed to ensure that bacteria and nutrient-rich effluent doesn't enter the water, surface and groundwater. So it's a really critical program just in itself. The way we operate the program right now is RVCA manages all the program administration, and it's basically their staff operating in our offices and in our watershed under our banner who are delivering that septic work. Eric Colsmith, for example, who's on the call right now, should any of you have questions you want to ask, has an office right next to mine here at our offices and is working with Emma, who you just gave permission to deliver the program in our watershed. So we have all sorts of existing working relationships with our municipal partners and as well as contractors in the area, and we're very well able to deliver the program and to use delivery of that program to help the cost effectiveness of our field visits generally, because it's the same sort of people, as you just learned with Emma, who are going to do inspections elsewhere. Well, the planning and organization of those inspection days can be efficiency improved by being able to provide the full range of services here. So it also, of course, allows for consistency amongst the various watershed, and the fee structure as required by the Ontario Building Code is fully cost recovered. So what I'm looking for from the board today is that you agree in principle for us to bring forward a proposal to the municipalities who have received this notice from the health unit and to report back to you with the results.
All right, we get off full screen. Are there any questions or comments before we go to the resolution?
John Ingalls.
Yes.
Sally, it doesn't mention in the report that Central Frontenac is now it has mandatory septic inspections throughout the whole township. And a year ago, I heard a speaker comment that it was going to take them at least 10 years to catch up. Do you feel that MVCA can handle a load like that?
So I'll give you the initial response, and if Eric wants to chime in after, if he has some additional comments. So under this proposed service delivery model, by partnering with CAT region and Quinte region, we're looking to flesh out coverage in the watershed. We recognize that additional staff may be required.
Okay.
All right, we're down to 9 people, Sally, and this is the last major resolution we've got to get done. So are there any more comments or questions?
As long as it's cost recovery, it's supportable.
All right, so the resolution is resolved that the board authorize staff to offer and provide septic system services on a full cost recovery basis to areas currently serviced by the Kingston, Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington Health Unit in partnership with other conservation authorities. I need someone to move.
I move that.
Move it.
Okay, Phil
I'll second
moved.
it.
John Inglis seconds. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
All right, everyone's in favor. Motion is carried. Thank you. So the next item, I would suggest we defer Allison's report because one, I think it's extremely important that more of the board hear it. And I apologize that we went so late. And two, I think we may wish to consider very quickly running through 12 and 13, but I want to make sure that I can close the meeting with a quorum. So I just wanted, is there any way to quickly get through the Canadian Wildlife Services and the Bell easement in like maybe 5 minutes each or less?
Absolutely.
All right. So Allison, I hope you're okay if Allison's online. I'd really like to have the full board hear your presentation.
And as chair of that committee, I'm also okay with that, Janet.
All right, thank you, John.
Okay, so starting with the Canadian Wildlife Service, we actually, since publishing the agenda package, heard back from them. They are interested in proceeding. So we are going to proceed to negotiate the final details of that. It's basically a partnership where we provide to them the cleaning and maintenance services on a full cost recovery basis. And they've agreed to our price schedule. So we just need to hammer out a contract. So this is a FYI kind of item in case you guys have any concerns.
Any comments?
No concern.
No concern.
No.
All right.
So the Bell easement is a longstanding easement agreement that we've had with them, and it's come due. And historically, we didn't take cost of living increases. And so what I'm proposing going forward is to at least see cost of living increases annualized and inflated year over year. That's my proposed strategy going in. And we're also going to be consulting with some other CAs to see if they have similar agreements.
What are we actually charging for, Sally?
Pardon me?
What are we actually charging for?
Unfortunately, because I had to run down to Shannon's office because I lost connection. I don't have the number in front of me. It's in the agenda package.
It's about $1,600, $1,650 is my recollection.
Yeah,
yeah, I know the number. I just wondered what the service was that we're providing.
It's a 33, wait, is it the full 33 kilometers? I can't remember the exact length of the easement, but it's basically access across our land.
And do we incur a cost? Do we have to maintain that section of the K&P to keep it open for Bell?
Well, there is always wear and tear on the trail from their heavier duty trucks and the like.
Okay.
I would be supportive of the resolution of the inserting the cost of living, assuming that you would now ask for the 5-year increase in the cost of living from 2015 to 2020.
That was exactly what I was going to go in with. Start with backdating it to 2015 and move forward from there. So that will be my opening position, Phil.
Good. Well, stick to it. I noticed in my cable fees, they always have all these extra CRTC ruling fees and gosh knows what. So,
Phil, I want you to know that when we were talking about this, we all said, Phil is going to love this. So we knew you would support our asking for cost of living, and damn right. All right, any more comments or questions?
Janet, the one thing I wanted to raise is the July meeting.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there any other business? So go ahead.
So aside from the Q2 report that Angela just mentioned, we don't actually have any business items to bring forward to next month's meeting. So the question was whether or not we're comfortable waiting to the September meeting because we normally do not have a meeting in August. So I'm just wanted to get some sense from members whether or not we're okay deferring that financial report, given that she just gave you one this month.
Does Allison mind if we're holding up her watershed report?
No, it is not holding up Allison's work.
Okay.
Would we consider, if necessary, the chair could call a meeting in August if there was something pressing came up?
Yes, we discussed.
And dispense with the July meeting?
Yep, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. And we do have both a policy and priorities committee as well as a finance and administration committee meeting scheduled for the end of August. Because we will absolutely have business items to bring forward that we want to bring forward to the full board at the September meeting.
Yeah, I would suggest, given that a lot of members scheduled just 2 hours for this meeting, that if we need one in August just to get some items off the agenda, if we're going to have a very full September, that we might need to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense.
One element that could help for that meeting is even if we add a brief update as to what's happening with the province and Conservation Ontario with respect to the possible regulations that have been talked about, but we seem to be under the cone of silence.
Yeah, good point, John. So we were on a teleconference just last week with Conservation Ontario, and they have no further information for us at this time. So should, you know, important information come forward, absolutely, I can bring that to the board's attention.
Okay, and when you're talking to Belle, could you get me a Huawei pullover?
I'll work on it.
All right, any other business before we adjourn? All right, thank you guys for hanging in and keeping a quorum going here. Resolved that the Board of Directors meeting be adjourned. I need someone to move.
I so move. Faye Campbell.
Faye Campbell moves. Krista Lauer, no, sorry, who? Krista seconds. I don't think I want to get everybody. And motion, anyone, sorry, I'm so excited. All in favor?
Well, good, good.
All right, everybody, thanks for hanging in there and all the technical issues and everything else. So
have a good summer.
Yeah, have a good summer.
Bye for now.
Bye.
See you later, everyone.
Yes.